Hello, my name is Duncan and welcome to Bath Books or Back Away from the Donkey. And today is going to be one of, I'm hoping to do a few videos. If Squeak's behind our Michael the Labrador who's discovered a dinosaur, and I won't bother cutting that out. But yes, welcome again to Back Away from the Donkey, and today is the 40th anniversary of the release of Return of the Jedi. And if you've watched this channel before, you know I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm of the age that I saw Star Wars on its release in 77, 78, and I was only about 10 years old. So when Return of the Jedi came out, I was 15, and I was excited because no social media then, obviously, and none of the stuff there. So I was going to do a couple of videos today on just some of the media I have, some of the sort of booky, comic-y stuff that I've got. And I was going to start with the comic, the Return of the Jedi comic. I have here, I've got about 50 issues here. There was 150 of these published. I've got about 50, and some of these are my original ones. And that was for the Return of the Jedi. The original Star Wars comic, if you don't know, it actually basically saved Marvel. Marvel was having financial problems at the time in 76, 77, and basically Roy Thomas talked Stan Lee, who didn't want to do it, into publishing the adaptation, the comic adaptation of film Star Wars. And it's quite weird because it came out before the original Star Wars came out, which was quite unusual. And also they paid nothing for it. So they now rights for it would be worth a fortune, but they didn't pay anything for it. And it was like to promote the film. And the original story of Star Wars, the comic adaptation, they basically adapted the first draft scripts. There's a lot of stuff in there, that adaptation, that's actually not in the film, which is all makes it quite interesting. But yeah, Archie Goodwin also worked on the original comic. But when we get to Return of the Jedi, he's not really involved. I think he's executive. He's one of the, I think he might be there, one of the writers at points, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But we get to the Return of the Jedi comic, and the adaptation is more close to the script of Return of the Jedi than the Star Wars one was to Star Wars. But the original Star Wars comics, generally, I will show you, got a few here. These are the UK editions. The US ones, they published them in shorter segments. There was actually more comics, I think. So if you can see, this is one of the original Star Wars ones, and they got some, something to fill up my notice board. I'm just going to leave that in because, yeah, some of the original Star Wars ones, because to show that we don't care. But what was always interesting about these comics is after they did the adaptations, they ran other stories. Obviously, the only proviso of these stories was the characters had to finish the stories as they ended the films, if you get what I mean. So they go on to the next films. And they got quite bizarre. In the original ones post Star Wars adaptation, you had Jackson, the 6-foot bunny creature, and lightsabers, and things like Luke was never allowed to fight Darth Vader, but they got around that by having him almost dreaming that he fought Vader. But some of these stories are really good. There's a lot of stuff on water worlds and things like this, and that's where the Return of the Jedi one's coming in interesting. I said the Empire Strikes Back also is one of the Empire Strikes Back weekly ones there. But when we come to the Return of the Jedi ones, they basically, most of them, you have issue 1 here, there. Then after that, they start going to photo covers. It's a bit of a shame, really. And the other weird thing is the first 2 issues are different sizes to all the others. Let me show you. It's all rather peculiar. So that's issue 1 and 2, and then if I show you, so 1 and 2 behind, and that's issue 3. So, and I said they basically went photo covers, except there was occasionally there was the odd piece of artwork, like this one on issue, which issue is that? Issue 4, which we had that, which is very nice. So the adaptation of the film ran for 6 issues, and it said it's pretty close to the film. But the stories afterwards are always what interests me. And some of the things we had in the background. So I've got some video coming up which will hopefully show you some of the insides of it. They also ran in the back of them as well. We had stories like the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. And later on, right at the back of it, we had Krull. If you remember the 80s fantasy, when they're trying to make science fiction and fantasy, it's a bit of a bizarre film, but I quite enjoy it. And so they had the comic adaptation of that. I don't own it at all. I said there was 150 issues of this. I've probably got around about 50, I think. 20 or 30 are my original ones, and some of the ones I've picked up in the past few years on eBay and other places. And I said I'd like to collect a lot, because I would just like more of them. And so put issue 3 back. And so quickly go through issue 1. I must admit the artwork on. So here we have the first page of issue 1 there. And I must admit the artwork on this feels quite busy. I'm not sure who did the artwork. I can't find a list of who did the artwork on the first. It's there somewhere. But you've got like a prequel. So if you see what I mean, it looks a little wee bit busy. And at the back of it, we have the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. But I said some of the stories that they tell out of canon that basically Disney said don't exist, because this was all over the place. The continuity of this are actually really quite interesting. I love the artwork on this one. Force Bounty. And this has got a story with the robot IG-88, which if you watched The Mandalorian, they had an IG robot in that. And also he's on in The Empire Strikes Back. And he's hunting down Lando and Luke Skywalker. And then also in these comics we have letters. Letters from kids. There's one from somebody in Ilford. There's one from Scotland. And then we have drawings. People would submit artwork to these. All these kids' drawings. So they renumbered these from issue 1, whereas Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars, they didn't. They continued, the continuity went on, but they decided to almost reset these, because like the Empire Strikes Back one is technically 116, which continues on from Star Wars, that issue I've got there. So have a quick look at some more. This one is small. If we go along to some of the ones outside. This one is issue 12, so this is not following the film at all. And what they ended up doing was they republished in the background then. They decided to republish the Star Wars adaptation. Sometimes colorized, because they didn't originally have colour on a lot of the Star Wars ones when they'd shown it. And that's from the original Star Wars adaptation that they reprinted in this. So I've got about 3 copies of this adaptation there. And then at the beginning, in front of it, they started with their own original story. And Darth Vader always seemed to appear in there somewhere. And then you had other people that you never sort of appeared. So, yeah, starting this week, Krull, the official comics adaptation, which I haven't got all of it, which is quite annoying. But I'll show you the Krull one. This is the only place the Krull one's been published, I think. I could be wrong. Let's find another good page from the Krull. That's all the Krull going on there. Like I said, what it is interesting is the stories that are sort of non-canon now. And at the time, when you had these audited newsagents, for some reason, we didn't think anything at the time, but nor did anybody else, they'd put them by for you, and then they'd write your bloody address on them, or your name, all over the covers. I've got loads like that, and it's like, why did they do that? There's some more of the Krull adaptation. It's a great one of the Cyclops, who I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And then we got part of, they went on to the Empire Strikes Back adaptation in the Return of the Jedi 1 when they wanted to fill it up. I said in the Star Wars one, you went end up with things like Star-Lord and the original Guardians of the Galaxy. But I said what I said I find really good is some of the original stories they had in the back of these, which were really, really entertaining. I think if anybody's interested, one day I might have to literally go piece through a proper story. I've also got some comics from, which has got Battle on Ord Mantell, which were published the, I think, early 90s from Dark Horse Comics, and which I can go through at some point if anybody's interested. So yes, so that is my collection of, I said, Return of the Jedi Weekly. So I've got about 50 issues there. There's 150 were actually published. I've got about 20 or so of these were my original ones, and some of the other ones I said I got off eBay. And if anybody knows of any going in UK, I'd love to complete my collection. And I said, that's those there. But to go along with those, you also had the annuals. And if you're of a certain age, you'll know that everything ended up as an annual. I'm going to start by showing you an original Star Wars annual. This was mine. Okay. And okay. So I got this in about 1978. It cost £1.50 at the time. I'm interested. And this just started off with some of that and some other things. And for some reason at the time, I decided it needed to be coloured in. Okay, I don't know why. But some of the reprints on this are actually quite nice when they went through the whole of the original story. Then you have some more articles in here. Profile on Peter Cushing. There is in here. And a little bit on the making of. So yeah, so that was one of the original Star Wars ones. I've got another one which was from the following year. This one I picked up in a job lot of magazines and things I brought. So this isn't mine. Well, it wasn't originally mine. And this is just republishing some of the weird stories. And the print quality in this is not particularly good. It's bled quite badly. I used to be a printer in another life. Many years ago. I originally qualified as a printer, so I used to look at print quality. But this has still got a lot of stuff about Anthony Daniels things. But when we came on to the Return of the Jedi ones, the first one, which was this, and I quite like the artwork on that, was just, all it did was republish the whole of the adaptation from the film. And personally, I don't think the print quality is that brilliant on this. But it was coloured, which all of the comic wasn't. But I also think the artwork quality-wise is a bit busy. I like a lot of my comic artwork to be a bit more simplistic. And then the second Return of the Jedi one I've got, annual, has got what looks like a C-3PO being attacked by a bunch of bunnies. But I don't know why. And actually, who did the artwork on this one? Script Joe Duffy, and plop Tom Palmer, letters Joe Rosen, colours Glynis Wine, Louise Jones, Jim Shooter Eden. So who actually drew it? If it's got a bit dark, something the sun's gone in outside, and that's we're using daylight. What are the letters? Script and plot breakdowns. Doesn't seem to tell me who the artist is. I might go a bit weird. Editor. Okay. Script and plot breakdowns. Finishes, letters, colours, editor, editor-in-chief. So who actually drew it? I don't know. There's another one up here. Must be one Friends, I think. Where's these creatures there? So this was a reprint of some of the non-sort of film stories. I must admit, the artwork on that isn't particularly brilliant. I don't particularly like that at all. I don't know what's going on with Mark Hamill's chin in that. That's meant to be. And they got the Empire in the back. But yeah, so that is just a very, very short thing about some of the comics for Return of the Jedi that I own and have owned over the years and wish to own more of. Because as you said, I'm going to do at least one more video, maybe two on some publications I've had of Return of the Jedi. I said 40 years, making me feel old since I saw it. I actually remember the cinema I saw it in. I remember going with my friend. And I also remember that shortly afterwards they did a showing of all three films in another cinema, which was quite stunning for us as well. But yeah, so that's it for this video. And I said I hope you liked it. If you want to see any more of this sort of comic-y bits, just let me know, because I quite enjoy doing it and I'm happy to do some. And I said I'll do this because I like doing it and I like showing off these things. I can go through some of the stories. I said I've got a load of ones from Star Wars, from the first film from 77, 78, the stories. Just to say, a lot of these original Marvel stories were republished, has been republished a couple of times in some trades. I've got some back there, actually, some republished versions. What you normally find is they're published quite small, though. I don't know whether they were, that was just basically because that's how it was originally published in the US or not. But they're worth getting if you can't get hold of, said, the original comics. But yeah, oh, that's what I was going to show you. Some weird little adverts on the back. I see Empire Strikes Back ones. This is not on a very organised video, but I'm not recording it. On the back of this one, you have a art competition, Return of the Jedi art competition. And these ones, you have some Peter Davison Doctor Who t-shirt. You buy the official t-shirt. And see what other weird things we have on the back. Some full colour posters. And a Boys Brigade competition. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I said there'd be another video out today because I'm going to put at least one more, maybe two more, all about the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi and some of the stuff there. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will speak to you all again very soon.